We'll begin the program with a bit of a prelude by our youngest performing pianist in our home, Grace and Jane Thompson. They're going to set our minds to long, this is your program. This program is built on what you asked for. I spend a great deal of time beginning in February collecting information, reading old newspapers, community schools, history books, annuals from the school, and then taking requests from emails, the referrals back from the school. And finally, I think put it all together, and we hope it's just going to keep going. And you know, as if we're trying to do a repair and keep going. Because we're in real time. What's going to happen is going to happen. Right? And we all can understand and appreciate all this talent that comes as far as California and down to Tennessee and up to Minnesota, because they are lost nation in their past generation. So, first of all, I want to acknowledge our Sesquicentennial king and queen. We did plan to have an official coronation here today, but we did give them their tongues last night because he doesn't cook. But he looks good and convertible. But the story we were going to tell is they're the longest married couple in Lost Nation. And his parents were the longest married couple. And they were the king and queen, just in case you didn't know that. Here's the rest of the story. Daddy, you were born in Lost Nation, correct? It's the only place you've ever lived. Is that right? Okay. When you were first married, you were up here. Eleanor did not grow up here. And in our families, this is an inside joke. You see, Eleanor was a Stewart, Minnesota girl who came to Iowa and married Betty. Laura Maya Helmers was a Lost Nation girl who has spent her entire life in Stewartville, Minnesota. And you can ask the other Eleanor where they live because they've met along the ways traveling together. So just the way of the ties that bind, we all know somebody from about different. But today we have come home. And to get this started, Laura and John, we're going to sing "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning," because it certainly is a beautiful day in Iowa.
So this is my son, and his name is John Myatt Helmers. And since I married a man named John Ivan Helmers, I said, yes, I'll go along with the plan, but I'm not calling him John so you both can ignore him. So it may seem strange to do down here, but in Minnesota, this is mine. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow.
There's a bright golden haze on the meadow.
The corn is as high as an elephant's eye.
And it looks like flying clear up to the sky.
Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. The cattle are standing like statues.
The cattle
They don't turn their heads when they see me ride by. But coming up, Gigi. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way. Oh, what a beautiful day.
Well, dear,
What a nice walk, didn't we?
it was too darn long. And it's even better to be home in Lost Nation. You know, except for maybe one corner or two, the old town looks pretty well cleaned up and active. It's been 50 short years since the Centennial. What a huge event that was. And now today, Lost Nation celebrates 150 years of incorporation. You sure can say there have been many a change since I was a kid. So what are you reading, Grandma?
Well, Grandma here is reading from the Lost Nation Centennial book from 1972. I didn't arrive here till 1974, so I missed all these wonderful events. So I'm reading and learning about various things that happened. And listen, here is a great summary. It was written by Rochelle Bush, and it has to do with the Lost Nation Iowa Centennial News from 1972. Listen to what Rochelle says. Centennial builds community spirit. Here's Rochelle, John. Yes, everyone was talking about it. The first 100 years in the life of Lost Nation. Some referred to it as a big birthday party or celebration. Others thought of it only in terms of work or expense, but most of us called it Centennial. This Centennial was very special to the people of Lost Nation. It was a new beginning. We had only just begun. The challenge still remains for Lost Nation. May we continue in this kind of spirit for the next 100 years, that future generations may take pride in their Lost Nation as we have in ours. Ooh, listen to this, John. Early in 1971, Rochelle says, the Booster Club voted to observe our centennial, act as sponsors, and underwrite it financially. March 71, the steering committee had its first meeting. March 25th, 1971, Dr. F.S. Pegosh gave the Centennial Committee the use of the old drugstore for their headquarters. Oh, following are some interesting tidbits. The Centennial flower was the red petunia. Novelty sales netted $4,000. Church women sold 1,500 cookbooks. History books sold nearly 1,000 copies. Oh, the first carcass show was held at Rustic Park. Oh, there was a Happy Town trolley and the kitchen coordinators traveled over 700 miles on goodwill tours to advertise our centennial in all neighboring towns. Estimated 8,000 spectators viewed the centennial parade of 200 entrants. It was 2 miles long and it lasted 1 and 2 hours. The Bob Barnes Rodeo, the first for Lost Nation, was a real crowd pleaser. The Hearthstone Club sponsored the dressing and selling of centennial dolls. 1,100 dolls were dressed by community women. Dolls were sent as far away as Germany and Japan. Nation Rama, a pageant presenting the history of Lost Nation, had a cast of more than 80 people. Guys and Dolls, an organization for citizens 65 and over, was started during the centennial year. The first ecumenical church service was held on Sunday, July 23rd, and there were beards everywhere. Oh my goodness, and here, are you sleeping over there while I'm reading all this? Here is this poem by one of your favorite people, Agnes McAndrew. Yes.
Well, read on, Agnes.
Are you awake now?
I am.
All right. Here's Agnes's poem. Lost Nation, Iowa. What an unusual name for a town. How big is it, and where on earth can it be found? Let me tell you, stranger, and this I'll be glad to do. It's one of the biggest little towns, and in Clinton County, too. The population of our town is 600 and growing every day. The business places are prosperous and serve in a friendly way. All the folks know each other and will wave as you go by. And when there is a celebration, everyone has a finger in the pie. We are religious, patriotic, educated, civic-minded, and kind. You will be welcome here, and the town is not hard to find. Agnes McAndrews wrote that. She was Lost Nation's poet laureate. Remember that, John?
Well, Agnes and Rochelle, two of the multitude of people who strive so much to put Lost Nation on the map. I love how Agnes wrote about our friendly businesses and how we all knew each other, not only in town, but our surrounding farming community. It reminds me of that old Gus Kahn tune from just before World War II. There were so many dance bands at that time before the boys went off to war, and again when they came home. I think I can hear that tune in my memory again.
Nothing seems real. That's how I feel today. Hometown, my town, I hear you call, calling me far away. It's just a little street where old friends meet. I'd love to understand someday. To you, it may be old and sort of tumble down, but it seems a lot too close to my hometown. Although I'm rich or poor, I still feel sure I'm welcome as a cloud away. It's just a little street where old friends meet, and to treat you in the same old way.
Well, Like many little towns, it looks as if Lost Nation had a prosperous business district and school at its core. It's good to remember, John. Do you remember?
Oh, there were a lot of businesses. We counted 44 on Main Street, a busy Main Street. The school was crowded, even after an addition, and the churches were full. There were appliance stores, insurance savings, repair shops, gas stations. I often wonder what the causes were to change our town to the way it is today.
Well, here's an excerpt from the 1972 Centennial book, and this hints at that. And I will read you just a little bit more. By 1972, my dear, our country was still changing from World War II. We were raising the baby boomers, and our schools had reached their peak in enrollment. Life on the farm changed as machines could help with greater acres of work. Television and later cable TV became a more time-consuming form of entertainment. The automobile was the main vehicle of transportation. Train routes and service were disappearing, and multiple vehicles per household, plus the perceived endless and inexpensive gasoline supply, encouraged the driving to larger nearby, you call them city communities, for our basic supplies. Well, thus, as Lost Nation entered her second century, our local businesses were affected. But by 1997, it says here, about half the number of family farms had disappeared as the acreage sizes greatly increased. These changes also were manifested greatly in our town's number and types of businesses. Two major businesses expanded into new and larger sites. First Trust and Savings Bank into its new drive-up location at 200 Long Avenue, and the Lost Nation Elwood Telephone Company to its building at 304 Long Avenue. Oh yeah, in 1986, the change that affected every household in the Lost Nation area, the Lost Nation Press closed, and the Scoop came into existence. What a story of determination and dedication for that operation by a crew of volunteers around a kitchen table. Oh yeah, John, remember it was Betty Niebuhr, Karen Bright-Ollitz, Dwayne Rutenbeck, Sarah Bipney's, Karen Props, and Paul Skelly. Today, the Community Scoop remains our sole journalistic source with a circulation far beyond our little town. It keeps our former residents and, I might say, children in touch with home. Oh my gosh, it's Paul.
Paul Pekka. Oh, please don't.
Whichever you choose.
You must be in town for the 50th event also. You walked up to our porch just in time to share some memories and views on the events and situations that changed the size of our town, its nature of business, and the school districts as well.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Thank you.
That was exactly. Yes, real. Actually, we started yesterday with a little walk around town before the parade, and the parade was great, wasn't it? The kids next to us got candy, and we got a little notebook for our candidates. But walking around town, you see changes which have taken place. So I thought maybe it would be good if we went back to the beginning of this picture, look at some of the really earth-shattering, house-rocking events that changed just about the time of 1972. Now, I know what you're thinking, John, and I'm not talking about Annette Funicello and the Mickey Mouse Club. Certainly not shaking.
It traumatized me.
But, you know, anyone who's been in town for any length of time remember, well, prior, around 1972, prior, will remember their houses shaking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. Because lo and behold, it was a walking road freight train right through town, and I can't tell you how fast. And my dad would go to the back window watching. We could sit, and we would be watching Mickey Mouse or whatever on TV, black and white at its best. Frank Hyatt, that was color TV, by the way.
Heck of a train set, too.
Train set. And the freight trains were going through. Remember the old city of Los Angeles? The passenger train roaring through town, and the famous Hiawatha, which was the steam engine that made it look like a streamliner. Actually, it was called a streamliner. So they were great. They used to come to town then. In '72, Amtrak came. Lost. In '72, Amtrak came, took over the passenger service in the United States, and we lost our passenger service. We walked bankrupt. Shortly thereafter, we lost the railroad, and in the early '80s, that they tore the track. So these are some. What happened then, of course, is there's been just one of many shifts in what has affected, I will call the evolution of Boston, because it's evolved.
Well, from my point of view, I was in business I was one of these 44 businesses. And as the constant pressure on farms to increase in size, the obvious consequence was I had fewer customers. And all this is made possible somewhat by farm equipment getting absolutely huge. There's also, I would say, a competitive factor. People could travel with ease from town to town. And the consequence of this is, I think it even led to the school demise and reorganization. The pressure on the school districts, because they're paid so many dollars per student, just became overwhelming. And of course, the only other course of funding is the property tax, and that isn't always greeted with a lot of welcoming gestures on behalf of those who have to pay it. The first wave of school organizations began in the 60s. Linn-Mar and Pleasant Valley were small 1A schools in our competition districts. By the mid-70s, they were class 4A. How many of these districts have multiple high schools? Listen as we read and show you a summary of business changes between '72 and now. As you listen to the listing of the businesses in 1997, notice that many are seed corn dealers or insurance sales. We are truly an agricultural community. In many ways, a simple life, simple gifts, in contrast to city life. It is good to appreciate that when we come home.
Tis the gift to be simple, tis the gift to be free, tis the gift to hold on when we want to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of holy God. When true simplicity is near to love and to them, we shall be assured. Turn will be our delight till by turning we come round. I am ourselves in the place to start to be the body of love. To be the body of love. And the
John Alden Construction. Carol Paulson. Odd Jobs Inc.
Dwayne Bentrod, Aflac. Prudential Insurance, Barbara J. Burmeister. The City of Lost Station.
AJ's Colonial Inn, the Community Scoop, Doubling Insurance Agency,
Farm Bureau Insurance, David Platt. Gloria's Styling Salon. Henson Market Meat Market, LTD.
Hayden Funeral Home, Hollingsworth Realty. McCutcheon Computer Plus.
Paul McGonigal Repair, Main Street Studio, Mikey Richards Agency,
Ray Hainstock Trucking. Jill's This and That Shop. Edward Brett. Chiropractic.
Lynn Schultz, Garst Seeds. Paul Schrader, Pioneer Seeds. Bill Brower, Northrop King Seeds. Robert Foyce, AgriPro.
First Trust and Savings Bank, Lost Nation Elwood Telephone Company, EI Marketing Company, Clarence Cooperative Company.
Tim Dua, Golden Harvest Seeds. James D. Holtz, Garst Seeds. Anna Ziller, Wafels Seeds.
R&J Grain and Livestock, Inc. John Southers Heating. Taz and Mraz, Flowers and Tanning. The Pub Club.
Sybil's General Store, TriStop, U.S. Post Office,
Lost Nation Satellite Communications Company. Lacey Plumbing and Heating. Larry Hannon Repair. Apple Joints.
Gilroy Brothers, Feed and Supply, Inc. Goslin and Sons Electric. Shear Designs. Meyer and Sheldon Carpentry.
Chuck Fye Construction, Auto Detailing, Danny's Sales and Service, Herman Inns Seed Corn. Here are a few businesses that sneaked in and out in the 1980s or at the turn of the century. Wright's Grocery, Guidebook Electric, Leahy Funeral Home, which is now Dawson's Funeral Home with office only in Lost Station. Burnett Motors relocated near Macokota. The Marketplace, Ellie's Treasures, Big Boy Toys, Flower Girls.
So what businesses are here now? How can we find that out?
Well, John, I think today we have to go onto the internet to find this out.
Oh, I'm on it. Here they are. Schrader Dozing and Excavating, Sharon Homes Inc., Admired Construction,
First Trust and Savings Bank. LI Financial and Walmart. Joan Cutting. Lost Nation Mini Storage.
Pub Club. The Photography Mill. Stacy Crunkleton. Trish Boyce, Country Landscaping.
Oh, and then there's Jim Lee Insurance Agency, RGH Gilroy Trucking, Tri-Stop Convenience Store, Gilroy Guest House.
And don't forget Stagger Inn, Linda Schrader, Healthcare Insurance, Odd Jobs, Jerry Baby.
ICANN Marketing, Lost Nation Telecommunications and Electrical, Paul McGonigal Repair,
Kyle Snyder Trucking, Dark Horse Express, Robert Southers Tree Removal.
Lost Nation Country Club, or Kevin Rental. Bev Rickles, Cakes, Cookies, River Valley Cooperative. Well, John, Christie, it's
Great to
time
see you.
to see you. Farewell. See you later this weekend.
thanks for stopping by, Mr. McDonough. I don't know how he got such a good-looking woman to marry. You know, recalling those memories of the crowded and busy school reminds me also of many crowded bus rides as we traveled to music contests, ball games, not to mention the bus rides to and from school for our country kids. I recall Kevin Becker, Neil's brother, performing at the 2010 Los Angeles High School alumni reunion. Kevin recalled that there were 6, 7 buses that went out on those country roads in our district. And that after all the country one-room schools bordering our LN district came to our town, Bobcat Land had a tad bit of land in 3 counties adjacent to Clinton County. Those buses came back filled to almost capacity of 32 kids. That could be 200 kids. How can that be possible?
Well, here you are, Mr. Gill, why it's possible. Tidbits in the school news and issues of the Lost Nation Press, again, that 125th book, tell them this. School enrollment followed 1960 was 430 kids, 188 in grade 7-12 and 242 in the elementary. A bond issue was passed for a secondary edition east of the high school. The next year, 2 classes met in the Lutheran Church basement first semester until enough of the building was completed to move grades 7-8 into the addition. Enrollments near this level continued through that decade for the upper grades 7-12. But elementary classes began to decline. In 1968, the total K-12 enrollment was 358. That's from 430 earlier. The baby boomers were winding down. Yes.
But look, 20 years later, at the last of the best annual for 1988, the last year of K-12 and Lost Nation High School. In grades 7 through 12, there were 92. There were 107 in elementary, total 199. The senior class was the largest class at 21. Less than half it was in the early 60s. And there were only 3 bus routes.
Yes, John, I do remember. I was teaching high school here at that time. Oh my gosh, Ken and Sandy.
Come on up, babies. We let the coconuts come in, you know. So you guys have a serious history in the teaching profession. Not that I don't have to listen to the adventures of teaching.
We lived here well past all the years we taught, around 1978 to 2014. And when we were eavesdropping as we walked by here,
And thought maybe together we could recall that last school decade and walk you through the Midland merger.
Great. I did not stay teaching here as long as you did.
And my memory is better with numbers than events. What made you 2 decide to come to Lost Nation to teach?
we didn't know where the phone booth was. We called the school. So we stopped in at Beat after a street and Teddy was there. And we asked where a public phone was. He's right here in the desk. And that kind of set the whole tone. We were very pleased with it. And the friendliness of the street, or Main Street there, and everybody. That next fall of '78, I was science teacher for high school for about 9 years before heading to Coconut.
And Sandy, you taught 6th grade for how long?
About 13 years. And of course, our boys graduated from Lost Nation in the 80s. We were active in the community for 26 years.
So we witnessed those years of declining enrollment, population, and farms.
The urbanization of Iowa and of her schools.
Yeah, there were so many great accomplishments that last decade for Lost Nation High School. So many activities offered for students and a very good teacher-student ratio.
You can say we were small but mighty. Since we knew we were coming over to Lost Nation for the Sesquicentennial, we sat down and remembered and wrote down some of our proudest events of the late 70s and 80s. First of all, we had a new gym in 1974. Well, not only was it great for athletics, but also for musicals, a yearly addition to our fine music tradition.
We no longer took the marching band state contest, which was switched from military to foreign style marching. But we were part of the Oktoberfest parade team that made the district finals in the state.
In 1976, our boys baseball team made it to district finals against the state champ Norway. And from this decade, the classes of 1973 to 78 produced two of the finest high school athletes of all time, Kim Moole and Lori Bush, known statewide, not only for their high school records, but for the many junior college and high school championship teams they coached.
In 81, the cross-country team went state in this era. Golf was also added as a co-ed sport. In 1985, we had girls volleyball as a sport.
Also in 85, the mock trial team made it to state. Mock trial had to cancel their opportunities to participate in the state competitions in 87 and 88 because
Boys basketball team and the coaches Bryce Hines and Tom Squires made it to state tournament.
the high school welcomed foreign exchange students in this era, including students from Finland, Denmark, Japan.
But the curriculum was still strong as we offered foreign language. Students entered the physics Olympics, and for a time, the high school offered both the strong FFA program and industrial arts.
That's all great, but all of this takes dollars in a budget. And the fewer students just couldn't provide the state dollars to keep it going.
So it was the end of an era and the beginning of another. For 20 more years, Lost Nation was the site of the middle school, grades 6, 7, and 8, 2 or 3 sections of each. The school bustled with excitement as it was filled with energetic students who also enjoyed full music and sports events and teams as well as geography bees, spelling bees, math downs, math bee, vocabulary contest, future problem solving. We had field trips and service opportunities to places like Eden Valley, Swiss Valley, Smithtown, and museums. We were a strong project-based middle school, a concept very much geared toward transitional middle schools. The merger offered the students their own teachers, their own space, and a far greater range of activities and experiences.
But there really are 2 stages of Midland reorganization. 1989 to 1995, only the Midland and Lost Nation districts were united. During that time, Lost Nation also housed its own K-3 students, as it did Onslow or Midland. All 4th and 5th grades were in the older building in Wyoming, as well as grades 9 through 12 in the high school across the street. But in 1995, Oxford Jefferson also joined the Midland Lost Nation, sharing for another reorganization of one Midland Community High School District. Lost Nation retained the middle school and Wyoming the high school, but Oxford Junction and for a bit Onslow for the elementary stage.
By 2008, the new Midland Elementary was being built. Grades K to 3 were at Oxford Junction, grades 6 to 12 are now in Wyoming, and for just 3 semesters, grades 4 and 5 were in Lost Nation. Upon completion of the new elementary school, all district grades pre-K to 5 attended classes in a modern building in Oxford Junction, and Lost Nation school buildings were closed at the end of 2010. Work began on new middle high school addition, remodeling, and a second gymnasium in Wyoming in 2014. The century-old buildings are no longer in use.
However, open enrollment laws allow parents to enroll their students in other adjoining districts they chose, if that school chose to accept them. So considering Lost Nation's distance from Wyoming and even Oxford Junction for the eastern and southern farms, we have seen our Lost Nation students choose Cal Wheat, Delwood and Coconut, and even DeWitt as options for school choice.
Well, now that we have the memories, it is time to remember many of those very special people who added so much to our community by teaching and working many years in our schools. We know we can't name all of them, but we are trying to be inclusive of those who taught between our LN school walls for a decade or more. First, school board members all must be thanked for their elected and unpaid service. but our sources were not reliable to name all of them for the last 50 years. But we do acknowledge those school board members who served at the ending of Lost Nation High School and took on the formidable task of reorganization. Lynn Schultz, Don Snyder, Ellen Pitta, Wilbur Pitta, Sarah Whitty Bickness, Wayne Bush, Wayne Burmeister, Alice Lasik, Ronald Moore, Gerald Paulson, Galen Goldman, Ken Litterer, Bruce Peterson, and Board Secretary Regina Pitta. Now for our longtime teacher recognition, Lost Nation and Midland Lost Nation.
We ask that if there are any of those teachers present, that we read, at least wave your hand or stand up.
Our Lost Nation natives, those who lived in and taught for LN. Sharon Shelf Nickman, Sandra and Ken Brady, Christine Gilroy, alums, Madge Galloway White with 30 years, Principal Gary Mole, Patricia Gotti, Rena Wolfbetter.
Teachers who taught a long time across the Lost Nation to Midland transition. Mick Dorman, Karen Barnachek, Holly McCready, Mary Callahan, Paul Hansen, Brian Duvey, Carol Palmer, Principal Lynn Olson, Principal Superintendent Al Holmenberg.
Longtime Lost Nation High School people. Deb Thomas, Keith Mayer, Ken Billings, Superintendent Bob Steele, John Sutherland, June and Charlie Wentworth, and Susan George.
Extraordinary elementary teachers with decades of teaching. Margie McDermott, Renee Hansen, Mary House, Ruth Schultz, Betty Wurst, Shirley Peterson.
Staff, those who are almost all Lost Nation citizens, making our schools home. Eleanor Sheldon, Sandy Fields, Pat Hansen, Marcia Hainstadt, Sandy Becker, Sally Baker, Kathy Duffy, Sheila Gatz, Margaret Fleming.
We also have Heidi Burmeister, Jody Foyce, Helen Endorf, Irene Duwop, Colleen Smith, Eleanor Christensen.
Lori Bush, Dick Miller, John Rickles, Joanne Monsprecher, Tim Duo, and Jim Schrader.
Craig Newell, Ron Hiley, Raleigh Snyder, Wayne Burmeister, Earl Bush, David Dake.
When the moon has gone to bed, when the sparrows stop their singing, and the sky is clear and red, when the summer ceased his cleaning, when the corn is past its prime, when adventures lost its speed.
It's Rena Vetter from the wrong side of the tracks. Pull up a chair.
Yes, Robert Chair, you just missed the recap of the schools in change.
Well, that's okay. I've lived here in Boston my entire life as a resident and a student and a teacher here and in Oxford Junction. I belong to the same church, this one here, all my life, as well as many organizations, both in my youth and adult years. Perhaps we can move the morning, conversations beyond the businesses and school vitality into what happened to the other third of the day, beyond work and sleep.
Well, that's exactly what many Americans do. Work long hours and leave just a few hours before bedtime. For many, that is TV or home theater time.
And don't get started on video games and social media.
True. And then we spend more time on the road for our work, shopping, our kids, schools, events that are all out of town, and trying to find time to go visit family who no longer are likely to live nearby. Then realize how many women are in the workforce as well. It's no wonder that the traditional women's clubs are all gone, and the youth groups as well, for they require the parents to be their leaders.
I remember the Hearthstone, the Guys and Dolls. In fact, I recall a story of my mother in her 80s going to the Guys and Dolls meeting and complaining that there were nothing but old people. There's the Lions Club, the Women's College Club. How long did these groups function?
The Hearthstone Club was an amazing local club affiliated with the Federated Women's Club that was active for over 100 years. They ceased in 1993 and for several years held a reunion on the club's birthday. For the centennial, this group dressed over 1,000 dolls in heritage dresses. This group also founded and sponsored the Sesquicentennial Library. The Guys and Dolls were a social outgrowth of the Centennial for senior citizens. They held local parties and gatherings. I think seniors now just keep active in their own habits and far more travel too. The Masonic organizations moved when their meeting rooms above the co-op building no longer were accessible for safety. The Masons merged with the Lodge in Oxford Junction, and the Eastern Stars kept their charter but met in Cocoda's ground level facility. In 2013, they merged with Clinton. The Rainbow Girls were active into the 80s but ceased about the time schools closed. Regina Bush and Lynette Penn were among the last mother advisors. Some of the traditional men's civic groups, the JCs and various business men's groups, were short-lived, but the Lions were chartered locally in 1984 and included women too. Only recently, in 2021, did the Lions disband here after hosting numerous blood drives, holiday toy pickups, glaucoma screening, eyeglass collections, and sponsoring funds for playground equipment in Rustic Park. Enos Inns has been a longtime president of the LM Lions. And one women's group, the College Club, whose membership was open to women holding a college education, just ceased in 2020. This group's primary purpose was to encourage our local high school girls to pursue a college education and awarded local high school girls for academic achievement. This group also sponsored the Girl Scouts.
What about the youth groups? Those Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and 4-H. You would think that in such an ag-oriented community, 4-H would persist.
As did the Rainbow Girls, the scouting groups were active, while the community had K-12 schools. Cynthia Wozak was the impetus behind the Girl Scouts, and my mother, the last leader. The local troop was founded in 1957 and was active only about 20 years. Many Girl Scout troops functioned by meeting after school in the school. Midland and Delwood actually allowed troops to meet at their facilities after school, but it was always hard to find a drive home. Our local Boy Scout group was founded in the 1920s, nurtured many Eagle Scouts, and remained active until the early 80s. Many local clergy were the early leaders for this group, with Charlie Lasik being one of the last Scout masters. Finding leaders for the 4-H was a challenge to keep that Iowa-born organization alive in Lost Nation. The Sharon Light Girls and Northwest Farmers fared into the mid-90s. Then the 4-H days became solely the rustic days. Several area youths now are members of the Monmouth Co-ed 4-H Club and exhibit in Jackson County.
Yet today is the proof that we do have a few active organizations. Let's talk about two groups that function both as a community organization, but also a service organization to our residents. The Lost Nation Fire Department, and the Menzo Whitley Post of the American Legion.
Our local firemen are our local first line of safety and rescue. Founded in 1912 with cart and horse, then the first truck in 1922, they now have been located a half century in the old Schultz Center service with the 1989 edition. Our fire department is up to date with the EMS team, Clinton County 911, and sophisticated communication equipment. They proudly keep updated in equipment as well. Who cannot like the annual firemen's games during the resting days? In return, the community supports the firemen at their annual chicken dinner and through Sharon Township funds.
I understand that the biggest challenge for the fire department is getting firemen. It is a volunteer job requiring constant updated training, but absolutely necessary. Thus, let us salute our fire chiefs of the last half century.
Here are some long-time service folks. Ralph Ailes, also known as Shorty Ailes. Dwayne Bentrott, Jim Atkinson, Wayne Burmeister, who died on duty fighting a fire, Rex Duffy, Paul McGonigal, Bill Brower, and Robert Atkins. Likewise, the American Legion serves a particular group within our community as well as our entire town. And I am thinking more than the great breakfast every second Sunday of the month.
Absolutely. The American Legion and Ladies Auxiliary, which Lost Nation actively maintained in the 1980s, are dedicated to the service of our military veterans and their current needs and benefits. Our post is Menzo Whitley, number 381, named after one of the first area men to lose their life in World War I. Besides the aforementioned fundraising breakfast, our local post is responsible for maintaining the beautiful parade of flags on Memorial Day and that community service, as well as placing a flag at the grave of each veteran, selling copies, and arranging, if wished, the honor service at the burial of a veteran. And we are so proud of Lost Nation of our beautiful cemetery. Thank you to our capable and caring cemetery board. Our community also is so fortunate to be able to use Legion's fine facility for other community events.
But lest we forget those of our community who died in action, who gave the supreme sacrifice, here is Commander David Burmeister to read that roll. Please stand if you are able.
First of all, remembering that 44 Sharon Township men serving in the Civil War, 13 of those men gave their lives to duty. We honor no names. World War I, Edward L. Bush, Raymond Corcoran, William McCandrew, and Menzo Whitley. World War II, Laverne P. Bush, Willie Butt, Milton Durka, Irwin Ayers, Charles Edwin Loving, Raymond B. McCandrew, Sidney Story, Vietnam, Robert Charles Chuck O'Hara, John Strowdy Kardowskis, whose family were World War II Latvian refugees.
My country is a big, sweet land of liberty, of the I say. Land o'er purple mountains, majesty of the plain. Amen. Amen. God shed His grace on me, and crown thy good with brother, from sea to shining sea. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the ocean, white with America. Our home, sweet home. Yes, God bless America. From sea to shining sea, let freedom ring.
Well, I do believe we're getting close to today. What we can experience now when living or visiting Lost Nation. A first glance tells us our three churches still stand after almost 150 years of regular worship services. Union Church was built in 1875. Bethlehem Lutheran in 1879. And Sacred Heart, now named Our Lady of the Holy Rosary, in 1895.
Yes, it tells me here in the book that these churches served as centers for worship and for social functions and for mission work. At the time of the Lost Nation Centennial, the church's clergy must have realized that all of us have more beliefs in common than we have differences. It says here, these clergymen, Reverend Paul Skelly, Pastor William Carter, and Father Tom McConnell, organized an ecumenical service to be held on the Sunday of rustic days. This has been a yearly practice every year since, except during COVID. Oh, I do believe I see Pastor Keith Larson, a former Lutheran minister.
Pastor Larson looking for a place to park, I assume. Come on up. Pull up a chair. You need to help us out here. Tell us about the ecumenical efforts the past 40 years. We could come up with the Rustic Days ecumenical service as the number 50, but that was this morning.
Yeah, isn't that great? This ecumenical work, something that holds a warm spot in my heart in Lost Nation. I'm really grateful that my pastorate overlapped with that of Pastor Paul Skelly's. I guess I've never been in a community where the churches have worked together so well, so easily, and so effectively. And like you said, I remember hearing the impetus of this happened 50 years ago when they worked together, the churches worked together not only for the ecumenical service, but all the people in town worked together so well, planning and celebrating the centennial. And then that summer, there was a tragic car accident where 3 members of Bethlehem died. And the way I heard it, the women's groups from all the other churches rallied around to help serve all those funeral lections. And while empty spots remain for those families that are in the community this day, I guess it's true what they say. Blessed be the vine that ties. because the congregations have been working together ever since in lots of good ways. The churches joined together in 1983 and organized the Lost Nation Food Center that's provided food for those who have needed it ever since. And it's been joined by the Delmar and Elwood Methodist churches, and the food center remains in operation right down the hall every Friday morning. And then in 1989 and 90, the churches again united and formed what was called the Parish Health Ministry, and they had a parish nurse to provide some local health care. The office was downstairs at the Lutheran Church. Volunteer nurses have been Ethel Sturk-Burmeister and Marlena Leinbau Schneider. After Carm's retirement, Parish Health Ministries for a while continued to do some wellness workshops for people until that came to an end. One legend claims that Lost Nations Ecumenical Youth is being an origin for the UNICEF Trick or Treat Halloween or All Saints Trick or Treat Drive. And all churches rotate hosting the yearly annual Vacation Bible School for area children and grandchildren. All three churches pitch in as volunteers or providers for city events, such as the 5 times when Rag Ride cycled through town. It was great to provide homemade pie, ice cream, as well as sandwiches in 1985, 94, 2004, 2012, and 2021. Year-round, you can still find any one of the churches offering all kinds of events open to everybody in town. A Valentine's tea, a friendship party, beer, rabbit, howl, bazaar, fall cookie walk, craft sales, spaghetti supper, community coffees, ice cream socials, fall barbecues. And in the winter, every Monday morning, there's quilting going on. And all kinds of women's study groups. While we celebrate the ministry and the work of the 3 historic churches in town, a few years back, a Baptist congregation was organized. For a while, they met at the old school, and when that was unavailable, they met at Bethlehem's Parsonage for a few years, and we're really grateful they provided a place in town for residents to gather to worship. We also need to recognize local church members who have answered the call to public ministry during these past 50 years. Monsignor James Burnett was military chaplain for 38 years, and at the end of the service had 30 chaplains under his command. Reverend Stephen Worth was a Presbyterian minister for 38 years and is now retired. And we just heard Pastor Carmen Planks Jameson, who was ordained as a certified lay minister in the United Methodist Church, and the Reverend Lynn Feedy, a member of Bethlehem when she was ordained in 2005, and she's been a pastor of our Redeemer Lutheran in West Liberty since then, and she and her family have made Lost Nation their home since 1996. Of course, churches today have fewer members and smaller attendance, and our Sunday schools and youth ministries really look and function a lot different than they used to.
Maybe now would be a good time to reflect and remember how important these churches and their contributions to our community have been. After we view this set of posters and recall our clergy and musicians, we can meditatively listen to the message and song that the Horseman Sisters will sing.
Pastors since 1997 at Bethlehem Lutheran, now the St. Mark's Lutheran in our Junction, for the Reverend Danita Muller, Reverend Keith Larson, along with Deacon Bart Biason, and the Reverend Daniel Pell. Pastors at Sacred Heart, now Our Lady of the Rosary, part of a 6th congregation parish in a large area here in eastern Iowa. Father Richard Poster, Father Tim Reagan, Father William E. Miller, Father Greg Steckel, and Father Francis O'Doon. And for 2 weeks now, we welcome Father Robert Close. At Union Presbyterian Church, Reverend Paul Skelly, Reverend Grace Hammer, Elder Lauren Thompson, and the Reverend Penny Thompson, now served by pulpit supply pastors.
And those saints who often voluntarily accompany or lead music from a keyboard in their church include the Lutheran Church, Joanne Moleclapp, Sandra Rayton Snyder, Lynette Young-Kidden, and with Sandra and Lynette, they volunteered for many years of school accompanying at contests. They volunteered. And Karen Peterson Chris at Sacred Heart, the longtime organist had been Rosemary Ailes. Karen Chris then filled in, and Joanne Horseman for years has now been the music provider. And this Presbyterian congregation has been blessed for a half century. We only missed the ones the last 25 years of growth in this congregation and started rotating on that bench there by the time of high school. Leslie Hollinsworth Schultz, Ruth Eric Wilson, Shirley Randolph McFarland, Jody Randolph Snicker, Rebecca Dickman, Becca, Renee Wolf Vetter, and Pam Crawford all have returned home in the last 25 years.
I want to interrupt a minute. In the 20 years, there's been one person that I think of as Mrs. Music in this town, not only in the churches, but continually tries to bring concerts and recitals to all of us. Thank you very much, Pam.
Down on my knees, like times of boxes, timeless to me. Letters of photographs, yellowed with years. Some bringing laughter, some bringing tears. Time never changes, no memories of faces all of ones who bring to me all that I come from, and all that I live for, and all that I'm going to be. My precious family is more than an heirloom to me. Wise and shepherds down on their knees, bring their treasures to lay at his feet. Who was this wonder baby that came, living and dying, he gave life to me. Time never changes, no memory of moment His love first pierced through me. Tell it all that I come from, and all that I live for, and all that I'm going to be. My precious Savior is more than ever to me. My precious Jesus is more than ever to
You know, for one group I really appreciate in town is the Booster Club. Their willingness to be such a mainstay support for this town. And for the churches to work together with the club. It's good to hear the Booster Club is still here after how many years now?
Well, since 1952, that's 70 years. The Booster Club began with projects such as tennis. I was afraid I was going to get folded up in my folding chair. There were projects such as tennis courts that were flooded in winter for skating. There was the 4-H show, bandwagon for summer concerts, crossing lights at the school, and the town Christmas party. Throughout the years, the club has changed and now has as many or more women members as men. The Boosters now support the community scoop. They support Santa's visit to the library and a Christmas lighting contest. They are the strong supporters for Gilroy Rustic Park and Rustic Days, and they purchased the land for the Sharon Homes Apartments.
Gilroy Rustic Park is currently the center gym for community recreation and events, with a ball field, playground, gazebo, shelter, picnic tables, and now campsites for rent. Rustic Run utilizes the old railroad bed and is now been run for 35 years under the leadership of initially Mr. Kenny Marshall and now the Keidel family, especially Jim. It takes a great deal of volunteers to help keep this event running smoothly. Thank you very much. Entries come from a large surrounding area, frequently to warm up for the Quad City Vicks, but local runners always are recognized.
I used to visit folks all the time at Sharon Homes. Is that place still going?
Oh, yes, it's still providing a home for senior citizens now. Well, it's been about 45 years. It's 52 years since Charles Stahl presented the idea to the Booster Club in 1970, and Jim Gilroy suggested the name Sharon Homes after the township.
Dad died soon after, and Mom was one of the first residents in 1974. Some of the names one hears as board members for this Booster Club project are Paul Sang, Ward Hollingsworth, Clem McAndrew, George Dubling, Hubert Gotti, Wilbur Pitton, Vivian Mowry, Marge Whitty, Lowell Wolf, Kathy Duffy, and Cynthia Wazak. Extremely involved people throughout this Lost Nation area.
I always was impressed with the Lost Nation Library. I heard that Hearthstone Club funded it. I see the library is now an active place on Main Street up where we have on Pleasant Street. I was a pretty regular patron there and checked out dozens of books each year. I remember Margaret Rasmussen she always had suggestions for me. And once she wasn't even gonna let me check out a book because she didn't think a half hour read such a book. How's the library keep going? They don't let you check out books.
It's supported by city funds. What was the book?
It's entitled Lost Nation.
Oh. Well, the library is supported by city funds and donations, which are necessary to keep inventory updated.
Yes, the children's section houses a large selection, and there are times set aside for children's creative activities. The library is staffed for about 20 hours per week and currently houses a few Lost Nation High School and Lost Nation City memorabilia. Some of our first librarians were Martha Myatt, Eleanor Sheldon, and Kathy Starling. Now the librarians are Heather Gilroy and Chris Foyce, as well as our new city clerk, Stephanie Dosland. Rena Wolf-Vetter is president of the library board. Of course, this is City Hall as well and hosts the city council meeting and houses the city records.
I'm wondering if we could find somebody that's been a mayor around here. I can't remember.
Mayor Emeritus. Pull up a chair, James. I think there's some beer downstairs. We have two questions for you. First of all, what is this hometown pride I hear about?
That is a state of Iowa department titled Keep Iowa Beautiful. The department funds counties for a period of 5 years to have the town within the county determine which projects and needs, then help them write grants to help them with their funds. Okay, write grants to help them with the funds. Clinton County and thus Lost Nation is in the year 5 of their time period. This community also has a very active looking and contributing in special events for that. And your
Just how long were you mayor? And how many mayors have there been since the quasi-centennial? How do you say that word? Quasi-centennial.
22 years.
Whoa. Barkley.
Mayor, myself, Ken Brady gave me a little break. Now Raymond Gilroy, amazing, recently retired janitor of the city clerk for all 3 of us. And back into Wayne Rubenbeck's term.
Oh, here's a list from 1972 to 1997. Please read that for us, Jim.
Paul Sang, Earl Bush, Earl Stanton, Marvin Hiley, Ralph Hale, Shorty, Betty Fleming, Wayne Rubenbeck, and of course me, Ken Brady, and Raymond Gilroy.
Well, folks, we have only one wonderful way to summarize many citizens who have given so much time, ideas, labor, and support to our town, Lost Nation. And once again, the Booster Club has done so since 1967 by naming the Citizens of the Year. Here we go. 1967, James Gilroy. 1968, Fred Cutting, Wayne Bentrott, Martha Myatt, and Everett Schrader.
1970, Charles Lasek. 1972, Ed Sturt. 73, Robert Miller and Rochelle Bush.
74, Anthony Sturt, Richard Swinson, and 75, 76, Mark Kelly, 78, Wayne Rubenbeck.
79, Janet Eganhouse. 80, Bob Steele. 1981, Ward Hollingsworth. 1983, Roy Kane.
84, Robert Schrader. 85, Polly Daniel. In 86, Wayne Burmeister. 87, Dr. Kenneth H. Randolph.
88, Robert Schrader. 89, Betty Niebler. 1990, Irene Moore. 1991, Lost Nation Fire and Rescue.
1992, Alice and Jim Idle. 93, Myron Randolph. 94, Mabel Nolan.
1995, Teddy Wozniak. 1996, Upholster Burmeister. 1997, Paul and Dottie Scully.
In 98, Tim and Jackie Duwa and Dan and Pat Nickman. 1999, Kenny Marshall.
In 2000, Vivian Lowry. 2001, Jim Schrader. 2002, Ken Lacey. 2003, Howard and Rita Johnson.
2004, Tom and Paula Gottseal. 05, Martha Sack. 06, Leslie Schultz.
In 2007, Ken and Sandra Brady. 2008, Susan Drury. 2009, Sharon Steiner. 2010, Enos Ellis.
In 11, the LN Lions Club. In 2012, Legion, the Sons of the Legion. In 2013, Joanne Cubby. 2014, Joe McGonigal.
2015, Nikki Sheldon and Shane Kinney. 2016, the Lost Nation Food Pantry. 2017, Daryl Paulson.
2018, First Trust and Savings Bank. 2019, LNE Communication. 2020, Jerry Day. 2021, Paul John.
2022, the People's Choice for GOATs.
I'm gonna stop just a second here. So did we get the 2022? Okay, Paul Burmeister is our this year's. And we're going to take just a break here because Jim and Pastor Keith get to retire, and then I'll catch you up on the People's Choice and what that is. So we'll say goodbye to Pastor Keith and Mayor Jim. The poster bearers will remain in place, and we'll go on to the People's Choice Award. I've chosen to say these because it became obvious as I collected everybody's ideas on who have been some of the greatest people in Lost Nation. I realized not all of them belong to the Easter Club. Several people had a case to plead, but others we might want to remember. So here we go with the People's Choice Awards. So can you switch if you have yes, not all of you have them. Now the trophies come up with the People's Choice Award. Okay. So we have number one, Marjorie Christensen and Daryl Christian, who are siblings. A family of musicians in service, a post-Easter Sunday Eucharist carrier, and a school teacher and a school board member. A comforter to you, and a POW thrilled to volunteer for life. Next, Lynn Smith, someone like a friend to Daryl in volunteer service. There for just about anybody. And Granny Florence McCann, our Lost Nation historian who wrote from way back when and an entire history book of Lost Nation. Dr. F.S. Pekoff, Lost Nation's family physician for probably around 4 years. 3-time state senator, Dr. Joe Sang, a veterinarian, also a musician, always on fantastic trumpet. Michael Sang, a professor of law at the John Marshall School of Law, named a Fulbright Scholar, and for twice, for a 40-year focus on housing discrimination law. And I can attest he's probably the best classical pianist of Lost Nation as a hobby. Okay, Joanna McAndrew-Lund, who authored 40 books on healthy exchanges along with best specials on television. Richard Wolf, the author of numerous books about sports, even car racing. Carl Wozak and his father, nationally known cabinet makers for church furniture. You see them wherever you go in this building today. 2 different eras. Freddie Hickman and Lowell Ward, remember The Brady's saying they came to town because of those friendly faces. Many people agree. The friendly faces of Main Street. And Gary Moore, longtime Lost Nation, Thomas Wheatland, and then he went to Midland to turn to his kids to be principal, teacher, and coach, following also his own high school, college, successful athletic careers. And finally, we know several people still think of Jim and Catherine honored him well, the centennial. So we'll choose out of athletes, those mentioned in the schools here, Lori Bush and Nick Moore, who not only has state records and school records, but trust me, they're on the record books in the state association, not only for their own records, but for those of their students and coaching. Who said those who can't teach? Here are two who could and taught. So we now recognize those 15 as including a place in Lost Nation history in addition to July 3rd today. Thank you for your service today, post-bearers.
Okay, so we talked about last night's concert. It's one of your two biggest memories, of course, after the kids. And the other one, we have to have a seasonal change. It's not Christmas. We're having Christmas. Why? So as we finish getting set up for our carol sing, which I will explain how it works. And those who are coming up to sing to represent the three churches are the people in our cast. I think there's been a couple of cases where they are expanding the families that are involved. But everyone is to sing every carol. First of all, let Lord set the season.
Okay, all you people standing back there, it's 30 degrees outside.
Yeah.
The wind is blowing. We're sending all the snow from Minnesota down to you. And it's Christmas. I'm dreaming tonight of a place I know, even more than I usually do. And although I know it's a long way back, I promise you I'll be home for Christmas. You can plan on me. Leaves of snow and mistletoe and presents by the tree. Christmas Eve will find me where that love light gleams. I'll be home
He's faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him. Christ the Lord. Sing, choirs of angels, sing in exaltation. Oh, sing on his disciples glory to God, glory in the highest. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him. Christ the